Welcome, everyone. I'm assuming some of you had a bit of a drive getting here. So thank you for making your way here. Karen and I live in Washington State on the West Coast, so it's a little bit further for us to come. We live there. Our son and his wife live not far away with their twins, and the twins like to come over on a regular basis. That grandpa, that's me, reads them, and it is always a lot of fun reading them stories. I was thinking about what questions somebody might ask about me giving a talk on this subject. And I thought, what qualifications do I have for talking about the call of the unknown? And it got me curious because I realized I really have no qualifications. Because when you're talking about the unknown, anything you know doesn't qualify. So all the things we learn, all the things we know, our accomplishments, everything, those are known. The unknown is always the things we do not yet know. And so I don't think anyone's qualified. That at least made me feel a little better. So, the call of the unknown. The spiritual path is not about finding answers that bring an end to our questions. It is a path that leads deeper and deeper into the unknown. We like to reassure ourselves about how much we have learned, especially as we get older. It helps us feel as if we're standing on firm ground, and it helps us think we know who we are. However, it isn't much help in finding what Rumi calls the jewel of life. To find the wisdom of the invisible worlds within us, we must let go of the firm ground beneath our feet and who we think we are. We must risk everything. It reminds me of, we went down to the West Coast for a vacation with the grandkids. And they had been there the year before, so they all knew what to expect, and were all ready to do this and do that. And as soon as they got to the ocean, it was like they forgot it all. They realized, wow, the ocean. It was all new. It was an all new experience. They were a year older, which means they could now do things they couldn't do before. It was just like they had never been there before. It was a whole new experience. And I think this is a lot like it is for life at certain points. When we reach something, we're going beyond what we knew, we're taking another step, and it's all new for us. And that, in many ways, is the nature of the spiritual path itself. So I wanted to talk to you about a woman named Bronnie Ware. She works with people who are suffering from terminal illnesses. So these are men and women who they know their end is approaching, the end of their life, and she basically, as a hospice worker, talks with them, tries to help them. She says this: people grow a lot when they are faced with their own mortality. I learned never to underestimate someone's capacity for growth. Some changes are phenomenal. Each experienced a variety of emotions as expected, such as denial, fear, anger, remorse, more denial, and eventually acceptance. Every single patient found their peace before they departed, though. Every one of them. That's pretty remarkable when you think about it. It's obviously one of the most major transitions into the unknown we can face. And it's often what we don't like to think about, what people often push off. And at that point, there is no choice but to accept that what is going to happen is something they do not know. They do not know what is going to happen. So how do they find peace with dying? They have to come to acceptance of the unknown, that they are going to make a move into the unknown. And that changes them. They suddenly look back at their life in a new way. They see things differently than they did before they finally reached that acceptance. Before this acceptance is possible, they need to let go of the life they just finished living and their place in the world. They must recognize that they have reached the end of this life, and what comes next will be something else. In that moment, death becomes a doorway to a new adventure. Now, there are lots of transitions that we go through in our own lives. They're not as strong as that, but obviously birth is a major transition. Most of us don't remember that too much. It's a big transition. Graduating school, getting married, getting our first driver's license, all kinds of transitions. And each time we're facing something we don't know. What's going to happen next? The first relationship we have with somebody else. We're going on a first date, getting a first job, or taking a new job. All of these things are cases where we face the unknown, and it's always uncomfortable not knowing. And this is the story of the spiritual path is exactly this. It's not about what we know, it's about what we are facing of the unknown. So Ronnie Ware, after these people went through this change of accepting their death, she asked them questions, looking back in their life. Did they have any regrets? They often did. Their biggest regrets, however, are not about things they did, but what they didn't do. The most common regret she hears is, this is exactly what she says, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. So it's interesting that they see this, now that they're accepted that they're facing the unknown. But before then, up until that point, so they look back and they could see so much of their life they were spending with the known, the things they knew, more of the things they knew, doing more of that, whatever they do, because they felt comfortable with that. This is something I know how to do. I understand this. But when they look back afterwards, now having to face something really, really new, they realize there was a lot more they could have done. They held back because of the unknown, the danger of the unknown, the risk of going into the unknown. A recent scientific study came to the same conclusion. The biggest misgivings that people have when they look back at their lives are about how often they backed away from being all that they could have been. They didn't live up to their ideal selves. In other words, the potential. We all have potential, but that potential is unknown, right? What really can we do in a new situation? How really will we respond? We often, when children are growing up, they often imagine themselves in the situation and they come to realize they don't really know what they'll do in that situation. They can only imagine. And that's the thing, we don't know until we take the step into the unknown. We do not know what's going to happen. And that's, of course, what makes us so nervous. In other words, they ask themselves whether they should have played it safe and stuck with the things that they knew rather than pursuing the adventure that called them. Should they have risked their comfortable lives to strike out into territory beyond themselves? Should they have spent more time diving deep into waters that are over their heads? Why didn't I follow the call of the unknown? This is the question they ask themselves after reaching the end of their life. I think it's because we so often overlook how important the unknown is. And it's because we feel so comfortable with the known. Think of the things that we know as the tip of the iceberg. That's the solid ground where we stand. Everything below the ocean water, it's hidden. You can't see it. It's not clear. We don't know quite what's there. Are we willing to dive in to that unknown? No, we'll stick it, play it safe on the iceberg top. Maybe not be very big, but we know it, right? You're comfortable here. When it comes to the spiritual path, the only way forward is the unknown. That is what it's all about. Goldfish stop growing if they live in a small world. To grow, they must move into a larger home. We too must move into larger states of consciousness to grow. We must move into an awareness that is beyond the things we understand. It's a larger state of consciousness, beyond what we know. If we're looking for the kinds of answers that let you settle down and feel comfortable about what you know, then don't seek the spiritual path, because it's going to lead you into the unknown. But when it comes to spiritual growth, then no sooner do you come into an understanding that transforms your life, that you realize there is a higher mountain just ahead, far beyond anything you've seen before. So no matter where you go, you feel, you can recognize you've learned something new, you've gained something new, and it just leaves you then in a deeper state of realizing how much you don't know. Guideposts on the spiritual path warn you, you'll see them pop up, to let go of everything you think you know before you go any further. It's as if the signs warn us, saying, only those who know nothing may pass. This is the same experience that people face when they approach the doorway of death. They must take a step without knowing what will happen next. As Ruby says, we have to continually give up everything that we think we know to take the next step on the spiritual path. This means over and over again becoming a beginner, like a child who sees life as completely new. And obviously, this approach keeps us young and flexible, because we're always facing something new and unknown. We need to keep starting over because the experience of life changes us when we grow spiritually. Spiritual experiences change us so deeply that we can see the world through different eyes. In fact, this is a sign that we are having spiritual experiences, because the spiritual growth is not about new ways of thinking that changes us so deeply, the depths of our being, that they alter everything we see. So if the way we're seeing is changing, that's a sign we're actually having spiritual experiences. And this is different from confirming something you know. You have a belief, you've learned something, perhaps in the past, it was a great spiritual discovery. And we spend time confirming this. Yes, we know this. But the more we spend time with the confirming, the less we're discovering what we do not yet know. Right? It makes us feel more comfortable, like we have accomplished something. But that is exactly what we need to let go to find something greater, something more, something beyond ourselves. Another study of people's lives was recently published. It has been running since 1921. It began tracking the lives of 1,500 children. The study was asking, what brought the most happiness to people? What made people feel the most fulfilled? Who lived the longest, healthiest lives? They discovered that health and longevity did not come to those who chose a life of ease, relaxation, and fun, which is exactly what we hear most people wishing for. The people who lived longest, the people who were healthiest and felt most fulfilled, were those who pursued goals beyond themselves. They went after adventures that inspired them to take risks. The same is true for the spiritual path. The rewards come to those who reach for things beyond themselves, even what they think is beyond their own abilities. In a sense, if you're reaching for something that's beyond your own understanding, beyond what you know, beyond even, you don't even know if it is your ability or not, you have to have some kind of trust. We were talking the other day, the example about when you're putting your foot down, the path, the step you're going to take appears as you're taking the step. If you don't take the step, if you don't start taking the step, the path does not appear. That is the way the spiritual path unfolds. First, by the call of the unknown, the desire for something more, the desire to go beyond what they know. All of this sounds like a simple lesson. It is easy to put into words, but how do we find our way? How do we know which way to turn when we are in the dark without a light to guide us? Does it really make sense to venture deep into a forest when we have no sense of direction and can easily become lost just to pursue a rumor or a myth of some treasure? After all, we hear lots of stories, but we also doubt many of them. Are these really true? Is this really possible? Am I really capable of doing it? Probably the last question that worries us the most. Because I might find out I'm not capable. That's one of the reasons we try to stick to the iceberg, the top of the iceberg. When I dive into that water, it might be cold, it might be fish, big fish, who knows. These questions, however, can be answered, but only after we start the journey. We have to learn by feeling our way along. We don't even know what the spiritual path is, and no one can fully explain it to us because we need to learn it by living. We need to learn from each step we take into the unknown. I have made some journeys into the unknown and come back. I've survived, so that's a promising sign. I've come back with a few lessons that I think apply in general. So I wrote down 3 of them here I thought they might be of interest. The first one is, never settle for answers given to you by others. This means the answers I'm giving you now cannot be your answers. Because only the spiritual understanding you gain from living matters in the end. We must each find the treasures through our own adventure into the unknown. Here's the second one. Our mind cannot help us when it comes to stepping into something that's beyond our understanding. Thinking is fine for figuring out what we already know, but not what we don't know. If this is true, then how do we find our way through the darkness of the unknown? This is exactly what we can learn only from following the call of the unknown. And here's the third. We must trust that somehow within the depth of our being, we will recognize the truth when we see it. And we need to learn how to trust life to guide us. Because what other choice do we have if we're going into the unknown? So this is exactly what people on their deathbed, knowing death is coming, have to accept. There is a story. I've been reading a book called Dreaming Beyond Death. It was written by a couple of researchers into the people that were dying and dreaming, and dreams they had. And they found examples of this from all over the world. It's very common for people to have dreams just before they die, and the dreams transform their feeling about it. And they were giving an example about an old man who had once been a captain, who worked on a ship at sea for most of his life. He was in his 80s, and his life, he realized his life was coming to an end. He knew his time was approaching, and he hadn't been out on the sea for a long, long time. But he also tended to be rather a materialistic-minded person. He had grown up with some religious teaching when he was young, but it really hadn't spent any time with it since then. And he believed the stuff he could put his feet on, things you could touch. So death to him was like an end. He didn't know anything else about it. And that made him a little bit worried, as you can imagine. It was the idea that he was going to be coming to an end. He had a hospice worker come in and talk to him. She just did a general talk about how have you been, what have you done, what do you think about these things, and went through this. And it got to him facing the issue, the situation, that he was dying and he was going to die. And he had a dream that night. And in the dream, he was out on the ocean. He was captain of a ship. And he realized he did not know where he was. And he did not know where he was going. But he thought back and he thought, I've been through this before. I know what this feels like. I will just keep going this way and I'll find my way. And he woke up the next day and he was not afraid of death anymore. He knew the dream was saying that when you come to that moment, you will know. And he knew that he would, in that experience of being a captain, he had faced that thing many times. Many times, if you look back in your life, when you face things that were unknown, you'll see how often you've actually figured it out as you went along. And that's where we gain confidence. And the more we tempt the unknown, the more we test ourselves by stepping into the unknown, the more we learn about ourselves. It's one of the most amazing things that we learn more about ourselves by how we respond in situations we've never been in before than anything else. So those three were just a few of the lessons I've learned. But the lesson that surprised me the most is that I always learned what I needed to know when I went along. Not by reading about adventures or devising a plan to crack open the mysteries of the spiritual life. In fact, I often tried that approach, and I can tell you, it always showed me how wrong I had been. They never worked. The plans never worked. Because we really don't know where we're going until we learn the signs along the way. The call of the unknown is like nothing we've ever pursued. If you really look at this closely, there's something very curious about this. What it's telling us is that the biggest discovery we make on this path is not that we are the hunters of treasures. We are the one who is hunted. We are, in fact, the treasure. Rumi has a story he talks about in one of his discourses about this. And he starts off with a quote from a Sufi teacher, Hakim Sanai. And it goes like this. Until you seek, you cannot find. This is true, except for lovers. How can they search for God being blind until they have discovered? What he's saying there, and as he goes on to explain, is this. The human quest is to search for what has not yet been found. Night and day, people seek that. But the quest that begins after we find and attain what we sought, we discover our true desire. That is a strange pursuit indeed. It is beyond our imagination and comprehension. The worldly search is always hunting for something new, things that were never experienced before. But this other quest begins only after we have found ourselves in the Beloved. This is God's search, for God is the finder, and God is the seeker. O friend, so long as you thirst for what is created in time, you are far from your goal. But once your aim passes away into God's purpose, and God's quest becomes more important than your own, only then can you become a seeker for what cannot be seen. Rumi is describing mankind's way of searching and how different this is from spiritual quest. Most people only know how to search for things that they can see or that their mind can grasp. That's the typical approach. Set a goal, I want to learn this, you have a pretty good idea what it's about. These are all limited and tangible things. But our true selves long for something more, which is why the desire continually crops up to learn something new. We are like goldfish searching for a larger pond so we can expand our consciousness, but we don't know how to leave the little bowl we live in now. Very uncomfortable. When it comes to finding a reality we cannot perceive, it is beyond our power. However, once we catch a taste of spiritual grace, the path begins to reveal to us something we have never seen before. In each moment, life unfolds a reality beyond anything we could have imagined. This is spiritual growth. This is not about ideas. This is not about things that your mind can even grasp. In a sense, you begin to grasp the sense of the unknown as an ocean that you can experience as something that is beyond your grasp. And yet, it's taking you, it's moving you, it's calling you forward. And at first, when we first take our steps from the top of the iceberg, which is the land, we want to take very clear, distinctive steps. But as soon as we're into that ocean, there are no steps. Each movement is with the ocean. And the ocean is moving us just as we're moving the ocean. It is as if life begins to speak to us in a language we finally understand. Since we have now become a part of it, and its goals, since we have now become a part of it, and its goals have become our goals. This is when we discover that we are the ones who are being hunted, and God is the finder, as Roman said. That is one of the most peculiar things. We get called into the unknown. We feel it, the desire of something more. Sometimes I call it the silent questions that come to us. Why are we here in this world? What is the purpose of life? And they call us, and when we take a step into them, they lead us into something that's far more than we knew. Step by step, the understanding grows. And in some ways, as we begin to look at it, is something or someone or somehow it is leading us. We're the one who's being hunted. This is, of course, a well-laid trap. The unknown lures us step by step until we are willing to lose all sense of ego, all sense of who we think we are. This is the payment we must make. The unknown says to us, you do not know who you are. You are not made from earth, but from stardust. I'm leading you to your true home. Our confidence with this experience grows as we take more steps into the unknown. As we take the risk, as we let go of who we think we are. Because oftentimes who we think we are is limited just by what we have done, what we do know. And our capabilities go far, far beyond that. Rumi tells a story about this. This comes from one of the discourses. The report of a lion spread abroad throughout all parts of the world. It was said, this lion had a special quality. Anyone who approached him boldly and rubbed their hands upon him lovingly would not be harmed. But if they were afraid, the lion would be enraged against them. Sometimes he even attacked, as if to say, what is this bad opinion you have of me? A certain person marveled at this woman, traveled from far away to see the lion. For a year this person endured the troubles of the road, traveling from town to town. After finally arriving at the thicket and spying the lion from afar, this lion seeker stood still and could advance no further. People said to the person, you set forth on a long road out of love for this lion, for this creature you have struggled on for a year. Now that you have come to so close, why do you stand still? Advance one more step. But none of them had the courage to take a further step. They all said, the steps we took up here were all easy. This one step is beyond us. So who do you think Rumi is describing in this story? Is he talking about beginners on the spiritual path? They're the ones that are afraid to take that step to the lion. People who are trying to find courage to take a step away from the social norm of what's acceptable or not acceptable, out on their own, taking a step to do something that might not be acceptable, but maybe their own inner self is calling them to do. Actually, no. The answer is no. He was describing the step of someone facing the step of God consciousness. All the other steps led to this one step. And yet none of those people were able to take that step. He goes on to explain this. He tells us a story about Omar. A bowl of poison was brought as a present to Omar. Of what use is this, he asked. They said, well, when it's not publicly advisable to kill someone openly, you can give them a little of this. Then they will die secretly. If it is an enemy who cannot be slain any other way, a little of this, and they can be killed without anyone knowing. Omar said, you have brought me a very good thing. Give it to me to drink. For within me is a mighty enemy, whom the sword cannot reach. I have no greater enemy in the world than he. These are his followers going, whoa, whoa, whoa. There's no need to drink it all up in one gulp. He says, just one sip is enough. This bowl is enough for 100,000 people. And Omar says, my enemy too is not one person. He is 1,000 strong and has overthrown 100,000. He then seized the cup and drank it all in one gulp. At once the people around him all became believers, crying, your religion is true. Omar says, you have all become believers, and yet this infidel within me has not yet become a believer. Rumi then says this. What Omar desired was not the faith of the common people. He had that faith in God. Indeed, he had the faith of the veracious. He was seeking the faith of the prophets with absolute certainty. That was what he hoped for. What Umar desired was that step, to take one step in the presence of a lion towards a lion. That step is a great and rare matter. The concern of only the chosen and intimate of God. Yet this is the true step. The rest are mere footprints. Such faith comes only to prophets who have washed their hands of their own lives. They're willing to take the risk of everything in that step and lose everything in that step. What is this step of God consciousness? What does it mean? I can tell you this, it's not a position like a rank in an organization. So if you take something like the U.S. military, you might find colonels, majors, generals, or even better, a 3-star general. You can figure out who is who by the things they wear on their coat, or you can ask somebody and you can find out what their rank is by talking to others. The step into God consciousness cannot be found or learned this way. It is only known to those who make the step. There are many such steps along the way. Each is a great step for us as we move beyond our understanding. They bring about deep changes to our being. Can we describe them? Yes, some who have made some of these steps have written down words and left records. For example, in 1976, Alan Smith, a medical researcher, experienced a state he called cosmic consciousness. He wrote this: "There was no separation between myself and the rest of the universe. In fact, to say that there was a universe, a self, or anything would be misleading. It would be an equally correct description to say that there was nothing, as there was to say everything. To say that subject merged with object might be almost adequate as a description of the entrance into cosmic consciousness, but during cosmic consciousness there was neither subject nor object. All words or discursive thinking had stopped, and there was no sense of an observer. To comment or to categorize what was happening, in fact, there was no discrete events to happen. Just a timeless, unitary state of being. That's what he described it. Others have described it similarly, just calling it being one with the universe. Is this the same as God consciousness? Actually, no. It's not even close. What about the case of people or saints who have had religious experiences, where they feel as if they are being transported to the throne of God? The whole realm is filled with light that pours out of that throne. Everyone in that world radiates light and spirit that is so much more vibrant and alive that physical light and life seems dull in comparison. What is that state? How do we recognize it? Some spiritual travelers who have crossed through these states have explained that the religious visionary experience is far beyond the human state of consciousness, but it is not nearly as deep as the experience of cosmic consciousness. And beyond cosmic consciousness, we find what some Buddhists call samadhi and the spiritual void. And beyond that comes self-realization, which goes completely beyond the mind. Still, none of those approach the step of God consciousness, where even the self is gambled away, and only the universal reality is found. The problem is that none of these steps can be learned by reading about them. The names and labels are meaningless unless you recognize those signs from your own experiences. So many times I remember hearing and reading about these things and then thinking I had an idea about what they were, only to find at some point experiencing that and realizing I was totally wrong. I had no idea. The experience is the only way of really understanding these higher states, these larger states of consciousness. They really are learned through experience. So why do spiritual teachers, such as Rumi and others, tell us about such states when they are so far beyond us? Because there is one most important lesson they want to impart to us, that there is no final step. There was always more. No matter how far you might go, you are at best only halfway there. Is it idea that we think what we really need to do is focus on that one goal, that one that what's out there. Maybe it's God consciousness, maybe it's self-realization. That's the goal we need to accomplish. But really, the way the path unfolds is the lesson we're facing now, in this moment. That's the one where our growth is. That's the one where the unknown is calling us. That's where the next step is. And all those other names, and all those other ranks and positions, they're meaningless. It's really what's right before us in this moment. That's what matters. In other words, don't be fooled into thinking you have made it. Right? Okay, so you've seen the throne of God. What more could there be? Or you have experienced the bliss of cosmic consciousness. Doesn't this mean it's now time to hang up your sign and start teaching? Or you have achieved self-realization. Are you now not above and beyond all those other lower stages? No, it does not work that way. In fact, the farther you go into the unknown, the more you come to see how little you know. More importantly, we discover the utter importance of everything, the utter unimportance of everything we know. Because we do not know, we still call us. The unknown is still calling us. It's as if the unknown is saying to us, you have seen nothing yet. All that matters, even for God-conscious beings, is that spiritual growth meets us wherever we happen to be. We don't need to make us fit the path. The path comes to us and meets us wherever we are in our life. That's the question of the unknown. There's always some aspect of the unknown wherever we are in our life. Something that we can learn from, something that we can grow into. And that's more valuable than some far-off, distant treasure hunt or a thing like that. It's right here in our lives. And seeing that, finding that, is where the real path is. So, we've made a big circle. Is God consciousness a worthy goal or not? Actually, no, it is not. Why not? Because no one can achieve that state by wanting it and pursuing it. No plan is going to capture that goal. There is nothing in our power to snatch that treasure. It must come from beyond us. This is the danger of thinking about the spiritual path as something that can be understood. It cannot. Anything that you think you know is something else, and it is not the true spiritual path. In other words, the spiritual path is no more than discovering what the spiritual path is. This is why it's so hard to explain. This is just as true for self-realization and God-realization as it is for any other step. Each step is discovering what that step is, and you're learning it as you're taking the steps. This is why the spiritual path forces us to throw away everything we have learned to start over and over again. Because we think we learned something from one step in our lives. We feel the spiritual growth. We feel we have learned. Our life has changed. We can see it. Other people recognize it in us, even say something. So we know it must be. But then we think we can use those lessons we've learned there for the next step. And we can't. Because the next step is beyond us. It's not this. We have to throw away everything. We're a child again. learning all over again from the start. This brings me to a recent poem from Rumi's Divan Shanti Tabriz that Farzad Mitra and I recently translated into English. It is a famous poem amongst those who have read Rumi's poetry in the original Farsi, but it has long been recognized as almost impossible to fathom. As we read it, you'll now understand why. And the ground we're covering will help make this a little more, make more sense. It's called Servant of the Moon. Now the moon, in this case, is a symbol, of course. And it's different from the sun. The sun has its own light. The moon is reflected. So in a way, the moon represents the unconscious in that regard. And this poem is a dialogue between Rumi and his inner master or teacher that's teaching him something. He sometimes refers to as love. And I'm going to read to you as Rumi says this, and love says that, so you can follow that poem. Rumi says, I am the servant of the moon. Don't talk about anything but the moon. Love said, when you're with me, unless you're talking about melting like sugar or candle, say nothing. Don't talk about suffering unless you speak of the treasure. And don't suffer over your unknowingness. Say nothing. Rumi says, I lost my mind last night. Love saw me and said, I'm coming, don't cry out and tear your garment. Say nothing. Rumi said, oh love, I'm scared of something else, not knowing. Love said, that something else no longer exists. Say nothing. Love goes on and says, I will whisper hidden words in your ear. Nod to agree, just nod. Say nothing. A true master appears on the path of not knowing. How subtle is this journey of not knowing? Say nothing. Rumi says, oh love, what kind of moon is this? Love, Beckett, this is beyond your understanding. Leave it. Say nothing. Rumi says, what is this not knowing? Say it. I will be completely changed. Love says, remain restless this way and say nothing. Love goes on and says, oh you who are sitting in a house of forms and illusions, rise and leave this house. Take your belongings and say nothing. Rumi says, oh love, be like a father. Isn't this not knowing an attribute of God? Love says, it is. But please say nothing. That's the poem. As you can see, Rumi was teaching the path of the unknown. And he was teaching it as a dialogue. Because this is how we learn from life, our relationship with life, our relationship with an inner teaching us, guiding us, feels very much like that. As the farther you go on, you feel more and more that you are a part of something, and it is leading. You are the hunted. You are the treasure being found. Why does love, who is the inner master, keep saying over and over again to Rumi, say nothing? Because what can anyone say about not knowing? If you think you know something, then that's not it. Not knowing runs away from all words and thoughts. But it calls to those who remain restless to know more, to grow, to find the source of life and life. Embrace not knowing, and you will find that it is the greatest guide to all of life's mysteries. This is why it is better to seek the questions than the answers. But no matter what treasures you discover and what mysteries are revealed to you, remember, say nothing. Because each individual must find the treasure of the unknown for themselves.